let's start with Stephanopoulos. Jim Jordan, the brave wrestling coach who ignored reports from his team that there was a doctor or physical therapist who was attempting and in some instances successfully sexually molesting them. Turns out there was something like, 1,500? Was it? No, 150. Many cases. Jim Jordan couldn't be bothered. But here he is on George Stephanopoulos' program, ABC This Week. This was this Sunday, I guess. I don't know why someone like that can continually get back invited onto, even though he won obviously a congressional seat. But here he is, Jim Jordan. And he's got a story to tell about Donald Trump's basically extorting Ukraine to get dirt on his opponent.
I still haven't gotten an answer to the question. Is it appropriate for the president to ask China to investigate Joe Biden?
I think he's got you guys all spun up, and obviously it's the case. You've asked me the question. You've asked me the question like 4 times. I've answered
because you haven't answered it.
I don't think he really meant go investigate. Do you think China's going to investigate him?
I don't know if China's going to investigate him. I know the president asked China to investigate.
We know they're not, George. Come on.
Why can't you answer yes or no? Do you think it's appropriate?
I don't, because I don't think that's what he did. I don't think that's what he did.
Pause it for 1 second. First of all, why do we assume that China wouldn't develop a storyline about anybody? Why do we assume that China, at this point, now that they've been invited to do so, didn't even need an invitation? Why wouldn't we think that certainly we would do this. Why would we think that they're not sitting around going like, it's in our best interest for Bernie Sanders to win, or it's in our best interest for Donald Trump to win, or Joe Walsh to do well in the Republican primary, or I want Amy Klobuchar. And so they just come up with a dossier of stuff that implicates whoever they perceive as being an opponent to any of those interests. I mean, why? The point isn't what we think China is going to do. The point is what the president did. I don't take the president seriously, George, but here, let's go.
But it was right there on camera.
I think Senator Rubio had it exactly right. I think our side says this is exactly what, I think most Americans say this is exactly what the president was doing. You would think after, like I said, a few years of following this president, you would understand sort of how this guy communicates. I think that's what he's doing.
You're still not answering the question. If the president is asking China to investigate, which he did right there, is that appropriate? Is that an abuse of power, or is that appropriate?
I think when the president is, and this is why it relates to Ukraine, I think when the president is trying to make sure that there is not corruption, that if we're going to be sending the hard-earned tax dollars of the American people to Ukraine to help them fight Russia, to help them get their country moving in the direction they need, to get the security assistance they need, I think he believes that we should make sure there's not corruption there. It's not President Trump's fault that Joe Biden's son was hired by a company that Mr. Volker told us this Thursday when we had him in for the interview, the ambassador, the special envoy to Ukraine. It's not President Trump's fault that Joe Biden's son was hired by Burisma, this company that had a long history of corruption. I think the president, when he's trying to decide how American tax dollars are going to be spent and what countries they're actually going to go to, it's his job to make sure there's not corruption. So when the vice president's son is hired by this company that Mr. Volker told us had a long history of corruption, was linked to the government in Ukraine, I think that's the president doing his job.
So you think it was appropriate for the president to ask Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden? Do you know of any other instances where the president has called on foreign leaders to investigate corruption that did not involve one of his political rivals?
George, we heard from the ambassador for hours this Thursday, and the ambassador told us there was no quid pro quo, there was no linkage between any type of security assistance money and any type of investigation. The ambassador was clear. We have the transcript where there is no quid. Even Democrat chairman said after reading the transcript, even though before they got the transcript, they said there's going to be a quid pro quo in there.
Okay, we don't need to hear the rest of his story. I have very little doubt that he's lying in characterizing that behind the closed door testimony from Volker. We've seen yesterday, Friday, I read all the text messages back and forth. That's all we need. But Jim Jordan and kudos to him. George Stephanopoulos let him repeat his fictional little thing over and over and over again. That's how you do it, folks. That's why he goes on to say, why would you go on and embarrass yourself? Like, oh, the president's just saying that stuff. It's just like a bank shot. But let me reiterate this thing. But if that's the reason why Donald Trump supposedly called because of Burisma he was concerned about with Hunter Biden. Notice he didn't say anything about Joe Biden. What happened to what Jim Jordan was on about with Jake Tapper just a couple of days earlier, that there was a whole nother conspiracy involving the 2016 election?
Of things you really think the American people are like, wait a minute, so Rudy Giuliani, the president's private lawyer, had a conversation
I think that you came here and leveled a bunch of accusations and allegations about Hunter Biden.
I didn't level. I just said the facts. Did he get paid $50,000 a month?
He was paid by a foreign company. Yeah, he was paid by Burisma. But Joe Biden was trying to get a prosecutor who was not pursuing corruption fired. And it was supported.
It's amazing the gymnastics you guys will go through to defend what you really
Sir,
think
it's not gymnastics, it's facts.
The vice president.
And I would think somebody who's been accused of things in the last year or two would be more sensitive about throwing out wild allegations against people.
I'm not throwing out wild. I'm throwing out the facts.
The prosecutor was not pursuing corruption. That's why the entire West wanted him fired, including anti-corruption activists in Ukraine. I don't understand what you don't get about that.
Well, now he goes on after that. Now you get, he goes on after that to talk about a complete conspiracy theory involving the Bidens. But there it is. I mean, there's Jim Jordan. He's doing his job.
He's doing a good job at it. I got to say, if I didn't have background on any of this stuff, I would believe him in both of these clips.
He's getting that message across. The rest of the stuff is just sort of a crosstalk.